Welcome to RPS Group of Schools online classes. Today we'll start with a new chapter from your textbook, Transfer of Heat. This is session 1. In the previous chapter, Heat and Temperature, we discussed heat energy, transformation of heat energy, temperature, various temperature scales and devices used to measure temperature. In this chapter, we will discuss the three modes of heat transfer, namely conduction, convection, and radiation. We'll also study about conductors and insulators, formation of convection currents in nature, applications of convection currents, radiation and its application in daily life. Let us start by discussing some basics about the flow of heat. Heat is a form of energy that makes an object hot. This means that when an object gains heat energy, its temperature increases, and when it loses heat energy, its temperature decreases. Heat always flows from a hotter object to a colder object, or we can say that heat flows from a body at higher temperature to a body at lower temperature. Transfer of heat occurs when two objects at different temperatures come in contact. Do you know what happens to a steaming cup of coffee when left in open? Your answer might be that it cools down, which is absolutely correct. But have you ever imagined why this happens? The cup of coffee becomes cold because heat flows from the coffee, which is a hotter object, to the surrounding atmosphere, which is much colder. This means that the hotter object will cool down and the cooler object will warm up. As you can see in the diagram given here, heat transfer occurs from a warmer object to a cooler object. Due to this heat transfer, the temperature of the warmer object decreases while the temperature of the cooler object increases. The flow of heat will continue until both the objects are at the same temperature. Heat can also flow from hotter end to the colder end of the same object. Let us perform an activity to study the heat flow from hotter end to the colder end of the same object. In order to perform the activity, you will require a candle, steel spoon, and a matchbox. Hold a steel spoon with its one end near the flame of a burning candle for 2 minutes as shown in the figure. Note if there is an increase in the hotness at the other end of the spoon. What do you observe? You will observe that the other end of the spoon that you're holding feels hot. So we can conclude that it happened because of the transfer of heat from one end of the spoon that was above the flame to the other end. Now, let us try to answer these questions. Why does a bottle of chilled cold drink becomes warm when kept out of refrigerator? Or why handle of a spoon becomes hot when left in the cooking vessel for some time? The answer to all these questions is heat transfer or flow of heat. There are three different ways by which heat flows from one body to another. These three modes of heat transfer are as follows: conduction, that occurs in solids; convection, that occurs in fluids, that is liquids and gases; and radiation which requires no medium. This means that the flow of heat by radiation can occur even in vacuum. Now let us discuss each in detail. Let's start with the first mode of heat transfer, that is conduction. Conduction is a mode of heat transfer in solids by which heat flows from the hotter end to the colder end of a solid object, or from a hot solid object to a colder solid object when they are in contact. Here is a simple example showing heat transfer by conduction. One end of the rod is placed above the flame and the other end is gripped by a person. Heat flows from one end to the other, making the other end hot. Now let's perform an activity to show conduction of heat through solids. For this activity, you'll require a thick copper wire, wax, thumb pin, an iron stand with a clamp, and a burner. Take the copper wire. At one end of the wire, put some molten wax and place a thumb pin over it. Clamp this end of the copper wire with an iron stand as shown in the figure below. Now, place a burner below the free end of the copper wire. Observe for some time. What do you observe? You will observe that the wax melts and the thumb pin falls off. So we can conclude that the thumb pin at the other end falls off because copper wire allows the heat to flow from its one end to the other end. Or we can say that the wax melts due to the conduction of heat from one end of the copper wire to the other end. That was all for today's class. Thank you.